When it came to making Unreal UI, I used to build every single user widget in my games on top of a canvas panel. So every button, every image, basically any user widget I made had a canvas panel. And I was manually placing, manually resizing, and everything was breaking whenever I would change resolution. And I think the main reason for that was that every UI tutorial I originally watched would tell me to use a canvas panel like that. And it's not necessarily an issue with the canvas panel. It's more that nobody really explained what other layout widgets were available and what they do. So today I'm going to do exactly that. In the last episode, if you haven't watched it already, come this corner, that one. Click on the card in that corner or go to the playlist and rewatch the previous episode because we talked about what widgets are. And if you're new to Unreal UI, I think it would be useful for you. Anyways, we learned about what widgets actually are, but now how do we arrange widgets on the screen? And that is where layout widgets come in. A panel widget, or a layout widget, is simply a widget that holds other widgets. Think of them as containers. Some will arrange things vertically or horizontally, place them into grids, or overlay them on top of each other. And there's a few other specialized panel widgets. And each panel has basically one job, which is position its children. That's basically it. They don't usually display informations themselves. Instead, they control how the other widgets behave. So let's start with the simplest ones, the vertical box. This one is simply a panel widget that stacks each child widget within it on top of each other. So you add a widget into it, it gets placed at the top. Add another widget, it gets placed below that widget. And these are perfect for things like lists, menus, chat logs, anything where the content naturally grows upwards or downwards. Now, when we place a widget inside of one of these vertical boxes, do you notice what we're not doing? Exactly. We're not manually positioning every button. We're letting the container handle that itself. A horizontal box is another option you have, which works essentially the same way as a vertical box, just sideways. So you can go left to right or right to left. And with both the vertical box and the horizontal box, you can set the flow direction to choose whether it goes left to right or right to left. Something useful for you guys. These are usually great for stuff like hotbars, or if you just want two widgets side by side by each other. It's the same principle. You're not positioning the widget yourself. You're essentially just describing how they should be arranged, and the container handles it itself. Grid panels. Grid panels are great when you need to make content that fits naturally into a table. So you have rows and columns, and instead of calculating each position yourself, you place the widget in, set its row and column, and let the grid handle the rest. These are useful for things like inventories, crafting systems, equipment screens, scoreboards, whatnot. Then we have overlays. Overlays, similar to canvas panels, except you're not manually positioning everything. Overlays allow you to, it's in the name, overlay widgets on top of each other. Except instead of setting the z-index of each widget, the overlay will overlay the overlay and the overlay and the overlay. The overlay will overlay each widget on top of each other depending on the hierarchy. This is useful for if you, let's say for example, you have a image as a background and you want to overlay another widget on top of that. You'd use an overlay. Now, let's talk about the most overused misunderstood widget in Unreal, the canvas panel. Let's talk about the good parts of a canvas panel. Canvas panels give you absolute positioning. That means that you get to decide exactly where every widget goes. You just drag a widget into the canvas panel, drag it wherever you want, resize it, and boom, you have your UI placed in the place that you want it. And canvas panels can generally be useful for things like minimaps, screen space indicators, and markers. But there's a part of canvas panels that basically every UI tutorial that I've seen skips. Canvas panels are expensive. And the main reason for that comes down to the draw course. I'm going to leave a article directly from Epic about optimization guidelines for creating widgets with UMG. And in the layout and positioning section, it talks explicitly about why canvas panels should be used sparingly. But the TLDR on it is that Slate matches its draw calls by layer IDs. So your layout widgets, so like the vertical boxes, horizontal boxes, and other containers like that, that will automatically layer your widgets. They would consolidate their children widgets into a shared layer ID whenever they can. Because the children are laid out in a predictable order, they don't really need to overlap or index their own layer IDs. Whereas with a canvas panel, they can't necessarily do that. And that's mainly because of its support for absolute positioning and Z indexing. So with the canvas panel, it has to increment the layer ID for each one of its child widgets so that they can render on top of each other correctly. So every incremented layer ID is a separate draw call, basically. So a canvas panel with, let's say, 20 children widgets isn't just one draw call, it's potentially 20, which obviously when it compounds, it can be really bad. That's kind of why nesting canvas panels inside of canvas panels gets expensive very fast. It's also not just like a messy hierarchy, it's compounding all the draw calls on top of each other. Usually one root widget for your HUD or your menu is fine, and that's basically what they're made for. But wrapping every individual user widget in its own canvas panel just to be safe and to have easier positioning, it's just not the way to go because it tanks your UI performance. And I'm not saying don't ever use canvas panels. I'm just saying have a purpose for using them. And usually when it comes to it, if you need a canvas panel, you for sure can just use an overlay instead. Yeah, you can just use overlays instead. That's usually what I use, and it works. I've had full projects where I've never even touched the canvas panel because I'm not doing anything spatial that requires it, and the project's been completely fine. Usually, if you don't know which panel to use, I'd say ask yourself this question. Do I need the widgets to automatically arrange where they are, or am I manually positioning the widgets themselves? If you're automatically arranging where they are, so needing them to be next to each other or above each other, use one of those layout widgets like the vertical box or horizontal box or grid panel. If you're wanting to position them relative to the screen, then a canvas panel would work. A lot of the times, just use it. But if you need manual positioning, a canvas panel works out. Great. Now that we know how widgets are organized, the next question is, why does the exact same button behave differently depending on which panel you put it in? So let's say, for example, you have a button and you place this button inside of a vertical box, but then you want to move it to a grid instead. You just move it, but now the button has completely changed shape and looks completely different than when it did in the vertical box. Why is that? And the answer to that is something called panel slots. This is something that I've never really seen many people talk about in UI tutorials, but it's something that once you understand how slots work, you'll kind of understand why things happen within your MG. It's usually the main reason a lot of issues happening. And we will be covering that in the next episode. If you've learned something today about layout widgets, consider subscribing. I'm Nads. I'll see you in the next video.